This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. Today's discussion is candor versus conflict avoidance. And here's the discussion. So much has been made in business about this notion of complete candor, radical candor, saying what you think at all times, giving sort of almost unfettered criticism when it's deserved. And this is one school of thought. The other school of thought on the opposite side of the table is this concept of conflict avoidance, where bosses, partners, colleagues don't give a frontal discussion as clearly as they should because they're trying to avoid conflict, trying to avoid upset feelings and other kinds of things. And there's schools of thought. I had one partner I worked with forever, a boss, a leader, that was sort of the king of conflict avoidance. It was a man, so I use the phrase king, no offense to anybody. It basically wouldn't have any conflict until he absolutely had to have that conflict. And there are positives in that approach. It avoids a lot of conflicts that don't have to be had, but there's also a passive aggressiveness in that approach where you can't really tell where somebody is feeling or thinking. The second concept is the radical candor, the complete candor at all times concept. And this is also right and wrong. And the truth on all these things between candor and conflict avoidance is somewhere in between. Some people can help themselves as bosses, leaders, others, partners, colleagues, saying exactly what's on their mind at all times. It's almost the lack of impulse control. It's not aimed at being a better communicator, although it can be, and then it's a positive thing, but it's almost a non-thoughtful lack of impulse control that leads somebody to say what's on their mind, even knowing that it's going to trigger the other person they're in a discussion with. And that's okay if you're trying to trigger them. You're trying to cause a certain behavior, trying to cause a behavior change. Again, the reality of all this stuff is the truth and the right answer is probably somewhere in between radical candor and conflict avoidance. One of the best phrases I heard about this, about feedback, about sort of managing people, dealing with people, comes from the CEO of Becker's Healthcare. I could say this because I'm not that CEO. It's Jessica Cole, the CEO and president for a long time, who also was recognized not that long ago as the EY Transformative Executive of the Year. She has this concept of positive but clear. And again, it doesn't mean you have to pick all fights all the time or be so clear about everything you think every single moment, because that world will drive people crazy. But it's also far different than conflict avoidance. Complete conflict avoidance leaves people not knowing where they stand, and that's bad as well. But this concept of if I have to give guidance, and I want to give guidance, I want to prove things, positive but clear. How do I tell somebody something? Here's what they have to do, but they're doing a great job. Overall, you're doing a great job, but we got to do this better. Positive but clear. Or I love you, but my God, could you leave me alone on this issue? Whatever it might be, positive but clear. And I think I come back to this concept all the time of somewhere life living, somewhere between this radical candor, radical transparency, and complete conflict avoidance. Neither one of them's the answer, and trying to figure out the right method between them or the right times for both is so important. Some of my favorite people in the world are very good at one or the other. And sometimes hitting it in the middle is so important too. I hope people find this interesting. It's an issue I think many bosses, colleagues, partners deal with constantly. And I don't think there's any perfect answer, even though all these books today might describe the concept of complete candor at all times. Honesty, yes. Complete candor at all times, maybe not, especially when it comes to blunt criticism. Sometimes it's got to be couched in this positive but clear concept that Jessica Cole espouses. In any event, thank you so much for listening to the Becker Private Equity Podcast. At any time you have a comment or a question, feel free, 773-766-5322. We're always looking for advice on topics, guests, people, anything people want to talk about. We find the world and the business world to be fascinating and love the chance to talk about different topics and talk to people about different topics as well. Thank you for listening. And thank you to our producer, Chanel Bunger. Just a great pleasure to work with. One thing about Chanel that I just love is the responsiveness. When I do a podcast, it gets out right away. The positive attitude, the professionalism, the efficiency. it is a pleasure to work with people like that, and can't be understated, that mix of competence plus great attitude. What a pleasure to work with. So thank you, Chanel Bunger, for your help as always. Thank you.